Yeah.
Mr. Trump's youngest son, Barron, apparently now will not be a delegate at the RNC this summer.
Every little media tidbit of President-elect Donald Trump's youngest son, Barron Trump.
Barron Trump walked into a small, quiet cafe, but what happened next shocked everyone. In a world where his name is tied to wealth and fame, he did something no one expected. Dana, the tired waitress helping him, had no idea her life was about to change. As she handed him a coffee, a simple note left behind turned her day upside down and grabbed everyone's attention. Tune in for the shocking words that changed everything and started a wave of kindness and questions. The shocking note that transformed Dana's day. Barron Trump. That face, the sharp features, the calm demeanor, it was unmistakable. Yes, that Barron Trump. Son of a former president, tabloid fodder for years. But right now, he was just a guy ordering a cappuccino and a croissant. He looked up at her with a faint, polite smile, and in a voice that somehow carried both privilege and quiet sincerity said, "That'll be perfect. Thank you." But then he leaned in and whispered, "But that's not the whole story." Dana's heart did a weird little flip. Was it nerves, exhaustion, or just the sheer weirdness of serving someone like him in a place like this? She shook it off and got to work, frothing milk and plating the croissant like it was the most important task of her life. When she brought the order to his table, he thanked her again, and for a moment their eyes met. Not in a romantic way or anything, it was more like he actually saw her. Like he wasn't just staring past her like most customers did. It was unsettling in a way she couldn't quite put her finger on. The shift dragged on, as shifts tend to do, but she couldn't stop sneaking glances at his table. He didn't bury himself in a phone or a laptop like everyone else. He just sat there sipping water and staring out the window, lost in thought. It was odd. People like him didn't come to places like this, and they definitely didn't act like this. As he finished his cappuccino and croissant, she noticed him pull out a pen and start scribbling on the receipt. He folded it neatly, tucked it under the cup, and left without a fuss, giving her a quiet, "Have a good day" on his way out. The bell above the door jingled, and just like that, he was gone. She didn't think much of it until she cleared his table. There, under the coffee cup, was the folded receipt. Her first thought, please let it be a good tip. Her second thought, what's this note about? She opened it and nearly dropped the thing. 4 digits stared back at her. 4 freaking digits. But it wasn't just the number that hit her like a freight train. Above it, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." The attention was suffocating. Dana hadn't asked for this. She didn't want her life dissected by strangers online. But as she scrolled through the comments, something shifted. People were sharing their own stories of small acts of kindness that had made a difference in their lives. They were inspired, moved, reminded that humanity wasn't all bad. And in a weird way, that made it worth it. The next time she saw her manager, she made a decision. "Tell the morning show I'll do it," she said. But she made one thing clear. "I'm not talking about the money. I want to talk about the note, about kindness." The interview was simple, straightforward. Dana sat on a couch under bright studio lights and told her story. She talked about the struggles she'd been facing, about how those words had reminded her that she wasn't invisible. It wasn't about the money, she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. It was about being seen, about knowing that someone somewhere cared. When the interview aired, the reaction was overwhelming. Strangers reached out to share their own experiences, to thank her for reminding them of the power of small gestures. The note and the story behind it took on a life of its own, sparking conversations about empathy, resilience, and the unexpected ways we can impact each other's lives. As for Dana, she kept the note tucked safely in her wallet, a constant reminder that brighter days really were possible. Because sometimes all it takes is one small act to change everything. But this wasn't the end of Dana's story. The ripple effects of that moment spread further than she could have imagined. The morning show segment gained traction, and soon she found herself fielding calls from local organizations and charities inspired by her tale. One organization offered to pay her rent for 3 months, while another sent a care package full of groceries and supplies. Donna's initial hesitation about sharing her story turned into a realization that her experience was inspiring others to give back in their own ways.
A small kind act can spread in ways no one expects.
The quiet power of seeing and being seen. She'd arrive at work to find little notes tucked under coffee cups and sugar packets, written by patrons who had heard her story. Some wrote words of encouragement, while others shared their own experiences of struggling to make ends meet. One day, an elderly man left a note that read, "You reminded me of my daughter. She's no longer with us, but she was just as hardworking and kind as you." That note stayed with Dana, another reminder of the quiet connections that tie us all together. Meanwhile, social media continued to buzz. A hashtag, #BrighterDays, began trending, with people sharing stories of kindness they'd experienced or witnessed. The narrative wasn't just about him or Dana anymore. It had become a movement. People from all walks of life, students, single parents, retirees, were finding ways to uplift each other, whether it was through a heartfelt note, a generous tip, or simply a smile. Her relationship with her mom deepened during this time as well. They'd always been close, but the struggles they faced had often overshadowed the moments of connection. One evening, as they sat together watching the news, her mom turned to her and said, "You know, this whole thing, it's like a reminder that we're not alone. People do care, even when it doesn't feel like it." She nodded, her heart full. She'd always tried to stay optimistic, but it wasn't easy when life seemed to throw one challenge after another. Now, though, she had proof that even in the darkest times there was light to be found. As the weeks turned into months, Dana's story began to fade from the headlines, but the impact lingered. The cafe where she worked became a little brighter, a little more alive. Customers seemed friendlier, co-workers more supportive. It was as if the small act of kindness had infused the place with a renewed sense of community. She kept moving forward, one step at a time. She enrolled in an online course to pursue a career she'd always dreamed of, but never thought possible. She started a blog to share stories of kindness and resilience, hoping to inspire others the way she'd been inspired. The note remained with her, a touchstone she'd pull out on tough days to remind herself that brighter days were always possible. And as she looked back on that moment in the cafe, she realized that it wasn't just about the note or the tip or even him. It was about the power of connection, the ripple effect of a single act of kindness, and the simple truth that sometimes all it takes to change a life is to see someone, really see them, and remind them that they matter. He wasn't exactly the poster child for the lavish lifestyle people assumed he led. Sure, he grew up surrounded by gold-plated everything, but that didn't mean he couldn't see beyond it. He had eyes and a mind, a sharp one at that. While the world speculated about him based on fleeting photos and awkward public appearances, he was busy observing the world right back. And what he saw wasn't always pretty. From the moment he could string together sentences, he had a front-row seat to the circus of power and fame. Paparazzi, critics, supporters, they all clamored for a piece of the family story. Growing up like that could make anyone cynical or detached, but for him it had a different effect. It made him thoughtful, maybe even a little rebellious in his quiet way. He didn't buy into the idea that having a famous last name automatically meant you couldn't care about anyone else.
His mom was his anchor in the storm. She taught him to keep his head down and his heart kind, lessons she'd learned growing up in Slovenia before life turned into a tabloid frenzy. Those values stuck with him even when everything around him screamed otherwise. To the outside world, he was just another rich kid, tall, quiet, and mysterious. But there was more to him than met the eye. Take that one day in a hole-in-the-wall cafe. He, towering at over 6 feet tall even as a teenager, thought he could slip in unnoticed. Spoiler alert, he couldn't. Dressed in a plain hoodie and sneakers, he was still unmistakably him. But he wasn't there to draw attention. He just wanted a break from the relentless noise of his life. The place wasn't fancy, far from it. Faded menus, chipped tiles, a lingering smell of burnt coffee. It was the kind of spot where regulars sat nursing their cups like they had nowhere else to be. And that's exactly why he liked it. It was real. The waitress shuffled over to take his order. She looked like life had been hitting her with one thing after another, but she still managed a polite smile. He noticed. He always noticed. People didn't realize it, but he had a knack for reading between the lines. He could see the exhaustion behind her friendly facade, the way she carried herself like someone balancing too much on too little sleep. Every public act has a private story behind it. Barron Trump's quiet path. Dana didn't recognize him at first, which was a relief. For once, he wasn't him, son of... He was just another customer ordering a coffee and a croissant. When she eventually figured out who he was, she kept it cool, which he appreciated more than she'd ever known. No fuss, no special treatment, just a regular transaction in a world where regular was a rarity for him. He tucked the note under a generous tip and slipped out before Dana could see. It wasn't about getting credit or recognition. It was about doing something, anything, to make someone's day a little brighter. The backlash came, of course. There were critics who accused him of playing the rich kid savior card, questioning his motives and dissecting every detail of the story. He didn't bother responding. He knew the truth, and that was enough. As the buzz died down, he went back to his usual life, or as usual as life could be for someone like him. But the experience lingered. It reminded him that even in a world obsessed with big gestures and flashy headlines, the little things still mattered. A note, a smile, a moment of kindness. Those were the things that stuck. Years later, he would look back on that cafe moment as a defining one, not because it changed his life, but because it shaped the kind of person he wanted to be. He wasn't interested in following in his father's footsteps or becoming a public figure like his siblings. He wanted to live a life that mattered in ways most people wouldn't even notice. For Barron, it wasn't about being the center of attention. It was about showing up in the small ways that count. And in a world that often feels cold and disconnected, maybe that's exactly what we need more of. Barron's life moved forward with the same undercurrent of introspection that defined him. He found himself drawn to quiet acts of kindness. As much as the cafe incident had unintentionally thrust him into the spotlight, it also gave him a sense of purpose. Take, for example, his time at New York University. While the city roared around him with its endless energy, Barron carved out a quieter existence. He lived modestly compared to the lifestyle most imagined for him. His dorm room was simple, his social circle tight-knit. He wasn't chasing status or fame, he was chasing understanding. Barron's studies reflected his growing curiosity about the world. Sociology, ethics, and history dominated his schedule. He dove deep into topics like inequality, systemic barriers, and the psychology of privilege. His professors quickly noticed his thoughtful questions and unique perspective, though he rarely brought his family into discussions. For Barron, the classroom was a safe space where he could just be another student, free from the weight of his last name. But outside the classroom, Barron's actions spoke volumes. He volunteered quietly at shelters and food banks, never announcing his presence or expecting recognition. He believed in the dignity of the work itself, not the applause it could bring. His approach was intentional. Keep the focus on the people being helped, not the one doing the helping. There was one instance during a particularly harsh winter when Barron's efforts stood out. A homeless shelter near his campus was overwhelmed, struggling to provide enough blankets and warm meals. Barron heard about their predicament through a friend and decided to step in. He anonymously donated funds to cover heating costs for the rest of the season, along with a shipment of winter supplies. When the shelter director tried to find out who the benefactor was, Barron made sure his identity remained hidden. It wasn't about him, it was about the people who needed help. Despite his attempts to stay under the radar, word occasionally leaked out. The media's interest in him hadn't faded, and stories about Barron Trump's secret generosity would occasionally surface. Each time, Barron felt a mix of frustration and hope. He didn't want the attention, but if it inspired others to take action, maybe it wasn't all bad. Over time, Barron's quiet acts of kindness began to influence those around him. His close friends adopted his mindset, joining him in volunteering and organizing small initiatives on campus. It created a ripple effect, proving that change didn't always require a grand stage. Sometimes it just took one person leading by example. As he neared the end of his studies, Barron started thinking about what came next. His father's world of politics and business held no appeal for him. He'd seen enough of its cutthroat nature to know it wasn't his path. Instead, he wanted to focus on grassroots efforts, tackling problems at their roots rather than dealing with their symptoms. One idea that consumed his thoughts was building a network of community centers in underserved areas.
These centers would offer resources like job training, mental health support, and after-school programs. It was an ambitious plan, but Barron believed in its potential. He began drafting proposals, reaching out to advisors and experts who could help turn his vision into reality. By the time he graduated, Barron had already secured initial funding for his first center. The project launched quietly, without the usual fanfare associated with his family name. Located in a struggling neighborhood in New York City, the center quickly became a hub of activity. Parents found support, kids discovered safe spaces to learn and play, and individuals regained hope. As the years passed, Barron's network of centers grew. Each one carried the same mission: to uplift communities without overshadowing them. His work attracted both praise and criticism, as expected. But Barron stayed true to his principles. He wasn't interested in proving anything to anyone. His focus remained on the people who needed support, not the opinions of those watching from the sidelines. Barron Trump's journey wasn't what anyone expected, least of all him. But in a world obsessed with image and spectacle, he found his own way, a quieter, more meaningful path. And maybe, just maybe, that's what made all the difference. One of his most ambitious projects was a program designed to bridge the digital divide in rural and low-income areas. He understood the importance of technology in providing opportunities and leveling the playing field. Through partnerships with tech companies and educational institutions, Barron's program provided free internet access and digital literacy training to thousands of families. The initiative wasn't just about handing out devices, it was about empowering people to use technology to improve their lives. As he expanded his work, Barron's approach remained consistent. He prioritized collaboration over competition and focused on listening to the communities he aimed to help. His humility and determination set him apart, challenging the stereotypes often associated with his last name. He wasn't seeking recognition or validation. He was driven by a genuine desire to make a difference. Over time, Barron's efforts began to attract attention from global organizations. He was invited to speak at international conferences on topics like youth empowerment, social equity, and sustainable development. Despite the high-profile nature of these events, Barron's speeches were marked by their sincerity and focus on practical solutions. He avoided grandstanding and instead shared insights from his experiences, emphasizing the importance of small, meaningful actions. Through his work, Barron inspired a new generation of change-makers. His story became a testament to the power of quiet leadership and the impact of approaching challenges with empathy and determination. For Barron, success wasn't measured by accolades or headlines, it was measured by the lives he was able to touch and the hope he was able to inspire. Was this story a heartwarming act of kindness or a staged moment for public relations? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more.